This is Jenny-Jaymes Gunn. I am a community advocate here in Charlotte, North Carolina for LGBT women's rights with the National Organization for Women, gun sense laws with Moms and Men Action, and anything that extends equity to all. Thank you.
Good evening. This is Barb. I'm a community advocate here in South Charlotte. Generally, I drive people around and to doctor's appointments, and I'm getting ready to have my sign-up list for taking people to vote. Buttons, once again, I believe in healthcare for all. I've got some people that don't believe in Medicare for all. Gun violence, let's get some control of guns, and Black Lives Matter in honor of our friend Joel that passed away last year. So that's it, guys.
Hey, I'm Christian Cano. You're the co-host. My buttons are Moms and Men Action, gun sense legislation, healthcare for all, Medicare for all, and also in my heart, Black Lives Matter on behalf of Joe Oldham, who's a guest of ours who passed away last year. That's it.
Good morning, everyone.
Good music, Jen.
Yeah, it is very good music. I've got good taste, unlike you. But anyway, this is Coffee Pan Dulce, Thursday, October 27th, and we have a special guest on today, and we're going to be talking about, I guess, the drag wars, but not in a good way.
Yeah.
We have some people on the other side of the aisle that have decided that drag queens are the drag performers are the scourge of the earth, and they must be stopped, and having fun and frolicking and glitter and all that. Gosh dang it, when we bring that fun and we just ruin everything,
That's why we can never have anything nice.
Back to the good old days of no fun and just boringness and white men running over everybody, So it's just, how are you doing, Christian? We've got quite the topic on the special.
Yeah, we
edition.
do. Yeah, we do. Well, good morning, Jenny. How are you this morning? Today is October 27th. Or that's the day everyone will be watching this. So acting like it's October 27th morning. But
sure.
It's been a busy week. I know you've been busy, Jen. You've had all kinds of events all week long, right?
Well,
I mean,
on the date that we recorded this, I would have been doing my little gaming thing with the Vanity local
here in Charlotte
group called the Vanity House, and we will be actually proceeds from some of the beer sales, because we are having it at a brewery called Highwire, are going to a group called Transcend, which has all kinds of services for the transgender community, which I'm a part of.
Okay.
And I'm an openly queer trans woman, and go by she, her, and they, them, which is also going to make the conservatives crazy, because they have a war on pronouns too, just in case you know that as well.
Words are hard.
Even I guess they're going to strip all the pronouns out of the Bible too, and go,
that's right. Who knows?
Jesus doesn't like pronouns now. But anyway, I guess we should introduce our
that's right.
Special guest.
We'll do that. And we want to thank everyone for joining us on Coffee Pan Dulce. As Jenny said, I'm Christian Cano, one of your co-hosts, along with Jenny Gunn. Barb Bacon is actually not joining us today. She is training for another marathon or doing something that's really important. And we do want to thank those who join us on Facebook Live, but also those who join us on YouTube. And then the thousands who now join us on your favorite audio podcast platform. keep having to get all that out. So with that said, I don't have to introduce Jenny and I because that's in the tape that you see before the show starts. And we do want to introduce a special guest of ours. He's actually here in North Carolina, and maybe you can introduce yourself. I know him as CeCe, but he actually has a name. So introduce yourself, CeCe, or however you want to introduce yourself, and to our viewers and listeners.
Good morning, everyone, or afternoon, wherever you're listening. My name is CeCe Labrie. My pronouns are he, him. They're just my initials. So my name is Clincithia Labrie, and I am based in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I've been a resident of North Carolina since 2014, but I am a native Texan, native of Houston, Texas. Go Cougs. So I am very excited to be here and talk about the war on drag queens.
Yes, exactly. My goodness gracious. I don't know. Yeah, Jenny and I have this tendency to get people's hair on fire. I don't know why, because we're pretty nice. But some reason when they watch our show late at night, they're, drinking the wine or whatever they're drinking, and they just get really upset at some of the things. So they're really going to be upset that we have all native Texans here, and so that is going to be I guess good and bad. So we do thank you, CeCe.
Native Texans, native homosexuals, native trans people. I mean, we're
it's everything. It's everything.
It's gonna be flame on.
It sure is. This is so this is actually a special show. This is not our ordinary Wednesday show. I've been wanting to do this show for a while, all summer actually, but this was the time that we were able to do it. And we were going to be joined by the world famous CeCe, who is a drag queen, female performer. And CeCe, you're going to have to help me with the terminology because I can tell you what I was grown up calling them, and then anyway, female performer, is that the term we use, or is it?
So ironically, I was just in a conference this week, and that was so it really is going to be it's very much like pronouns, what people prefer to be called. I grew up in the old school. I still call myself a drag queen. There's times I'll say female impersonator or drag performer. It's really just going to be on the preference of the individual. I think CeCe, I've met and worked with CeCe before. I think she would prefer drag queen.
Okay, so CeCe, the world famous drag queen, for those who are familiar with CeCe, she's down in Key West, Florida, the undisclosed location that some of us go to every year. And some of her other performers were going to be on, but we are actually in the middle, when you watch the show, of Fantasy Fest down in Key West. So those who are not familiar with Fantasy Fest is like Mardi Gras, except just for adults. So it's a very different kind of Mardi Gras-ish thing down in Key West, but it's usually just adults. You don't get a lot of kids. So with that said, I do have to salute to our neighbors this morning. Whatever you're drinking, I am drinking coffee this morning, so I am really awake this morning. And I have to quickly come down here. We do want to thank our producer, sponsor, and supplier, Manolo's Bakery here in Charlotte, North Carolina. That's a Gunn. And please visit your Black and brown small businesses during this global pandemic, or any small business, always buy local. Manolo's Bakery in Central Avenue here in Charlotte, North Carolina. So, all right, with that said, let's jump right into the topic here. Today's topic is MAGA's war on drag queens. So there seems to be a war every couple of years, and Jen, I'll let you kind of start off. Every couple of years, there's a war on some group. And this past year, it seems like, especially in Florida and Arizona and some other states, and even here in North Carolina, my congressperson has been real vocal. Bathroom Dan, who actually wrote the bathroom bill here in North Carolina, Dan Bishop, was really outraged that there was a drag show going to happen in Union County, the county that he represents, one of the counties represents, and, gathered up all his crazy, people, and they were, I don't know what they were going to do. Anyway, so Jenny, talk to us a little bit about this war on drag queens, and if you have a little history, then we're going to talk to CeCe about some things as well.
Well, they always have a moving target. When one thing fails, like obviously the bathroom bill from 2016 backfired tremendously on the MAGA Republicans. got their governor fired. They got Dan Bishop fired and voted out of office and just cost the state billions of dollars and just regulating things that don't need regulation. And I find it funny that they want to strip people of their First Amendment right to be able to perform, because this is a First Amendment battle when it comes down to it. You have drag queens and drag kings and drag performers in general aren't harming anybody. The majority of the performances are held in usually adult places, and like bars and breweries, like and such, and they're a good time. They're on national and international TV. You look at the success of RuPaul, for example, which almost everybody knows who RuPaul is by now. Gay, straight, anything in between, and so I think one.
Yeah, her show won was it an Emmy, a Tony, Emmy?
Yeah,
an Emmy award, like several. Yeah.
Ru's won a lot of awards. The show is groundbreaking, whether you're a Ru fan or not. It set the standard for a lot of things in the industry, and also introduced it to mainstream America. Whereas, before Ru's fame, it was mostly relegated to just gay clubs and LGBT establishments, a lot more underground. When we were growing up, it was much more hush hush, and now it's just like everything else. We have introduced being LGBT with pride parades and pride events that are now, like here in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's the biggest outdoor event of the summer here in Charlotte. We drew 275,000 people to our deal. We had drag queens on our main stage and performers and things of that nature. And I think part of the pushback is because we're some kind of how normalizing our shameful lifestyle and being a bunch of heathens running around in dresses, it just defies logic how they talk about the First Amendment and the Constitution all the time. But you don't want everybody to be able to express themselves according to the First Amendment, just the good ones. And I think Christian's got a question for you, CeCe. So if you want to fire away and lead off. CeCe, I guess my question is, being a performer, and very good, by the way, I have seen her perform her bingo that she did. That's where we met. And so, CeCe, do you feel that like there's a war on drag queens, or have you felt that before? Is this something that I'm just thinking of because I've noticed it, or the actual drag queens? This is kind of what I want to ask CeCe. Is this something that's impacting you?
So my drag Odyssey started in 1997 when I was 2, so late. And in the late 90s in Houston is where I started performing, and even then there was a war on drag queens. I can recall my first Pride Parade in Houston, Texas that I performed at was in 1997, 1998. It was the first year that Houston started doing our Pride Festival at night. And I remember arriving to the club that I was representing, and I passed a group of protesters, and I was already in full drag. And most people were stopping to take pictures. This group, a gentleman stopped me and said, "Ma'am, you don't want to go that way. There's a bunch of degenerates and drag queens." And I was, "Oh, me?" Now, mind you, this was before I started performing as a bearded drag queen. So completely shaved, and I, just a little kitten wig. And I just gasped and grabbed my pearls, and I kept walking. But even, 2.5 decades ago, I've lived in different parts of the country. My professional job has moved me to different places, and there has always been this I use the word disconnect with drag queens, because those who've never been to a show or even had a conversation with a female impersonator, they don't know what's going on. So they don't know what a drag queen looks like. And I take it on myself to educate people and say, here's what to expect at most drag shows. Here's what to expect at most performances. I compare it to a theater performance. If you go to the theater, this is what you're going to see.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be some parts of it that you don't agree with, but for the most part,
Mm-hmm.
it's entertainment. This is not being a drag queen, a drag performer.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a gender. It's not a lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's a job, and it's a job that I truly enjoy.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if you have a question, Jenny, but that's one of the things I kind of wanted to talk about. You kind of jumped ahead, but I just want to kind of read you just three big kind of wars that are going on in the state of Idaho. Jenny probably knows that state. That might be the state where the guy said the good fentanyl, or is that not the same one?
So it's the same River Tucky.
Okay, all right.
Your cousin type area,
Sure.
but Senator Dames
Sure.
actually resides in and represents the state of Montana. But Idaho,
all right.
Montana, Wyoming,
yes. So in Idaho, this summer, the next time they meet, their legislation meets, they plan to introduce a bill. Their Speaker of the House, led by the Idaho Family Policy Center. It's a very, very conservative group. They introduced a bill to outlaw any drag performances in public or on public buildings or and so forth. And then in Florida, as we probably know, Ron DeSantis, our famous governor that we talk about all the time, he actually had to go back 75 years to justify his war on drag queens. This past summer, he, tried to pass all these they did pass the Don't Say Gay bill and so forth. But also in Arizona, the state of Arizona, even just 2 years ago, they were having a war on drag queens, and they tried to introduce a bill to ban drag queens. And this seems to be this. And Jenny and I, we've talked about this before. This war on drag queens seems to be one of the things that triggers these really conservative. I don't even know what to call them, because I don't know if these are the same MAGA conservatives, or this is not really the MAGA people. This is more the conservative people, isn't it? See, I get confused with both of them.
Well, I think MAGA Republicans are using this as when you have a political party that doesn't have any actual policies.
Sure. And
so your policies are just intimidation and, oh my God, I'm offended about this, instead of worrying about, I don't know, our economy or, the war in Ukraine or something like that, something important, environment, as our planet is burning down. They want to worry about drag queens, and obviously it is political. It is part of the MAGA movement because it's appearing in executive branches and state legislatures all over the country. So yes, it is political. They're politicizing something that is a First Amendment right.
Sure.
CeCe or any performer has it's part of protected speech, or performance of art, which drag performance is absolutely an art form, and it's just it's something that I've appreciated for decades. And CeCe's right. It's not a gender. It's not who you are. You don't identify as a drag performer. It's a job. It's a career.
Sure.
It can be a business in the case of people that want to do it full time, and it's something that I think a lot of people will be surprised what drag performers look in street clothes, and they're non-uniforms, and because two of my friends here locally that are performing today when we're taping instead of when we're airing the show, look way different in street clothes when I have lunch with them than they do at their performance deal. And it's just like it goes back to the Shakespearean days when all the genders were played by men. So even the women in Romeo and Juliet, it was actually two Romeos kissing and going, "Where art thou, dear fair Juliet?" And so I think a lot of misconceptions about drag is caused this. I think also too a little bit of opportunistic stuff. Some drag performers have opted to do story times and library things and school appearances, and they've conflated this You know, when they're sitting there reading Dr. Seuss to a bunch of 7-year-olds and 8-year-olds, they've conflated this into some type of sexualizing children or exploiting children. And this is where that's kind of some of these modern battles in the last few years have started. And it would be just like anybody else in a work uniform, whether it's a police officer sitting there reading a book to a kid, or the president of the United States when the towers fell, and President Bush in 2001 was reading a book in an elementary school. It'd be like saying, well, President Bush was politicizing those children and trying to make them Republicans because he was reading a book to a bunch of kids. Kids don't care. And so
that's you know, Jenny.
Hang on a second. And I think we have to identify as one, when kids see drag queens, they just seem as colorful and funny and playful and all that, because kids evaluate you as what you are. They actually see people for who they are instead of what we want to infer into it. Adult politicians, on the other hand, take things and twist it to their own liking and their own agenda. And on that note, you know, CeCe, have you run into any lately in the last couple of years? Have you run into any type of pushback or any kind of confrontational situations in any of your performances in the last couple of years?
Actually, yes. And before I address that, I wanted to talk about when you talked about children. I was at an LGBTQ workplace conference in Las Vegas this week, and I actually spoke on the title of my workshop was called "Work is a Drag: The Art of Personal Branding." And we're at the hotel walking through, as myself and 4 other professionals, white collar professionals who also perform in drag. And this little girl we were walking in full drag through the lobby, and this little girl said, "Daddy, look at all those princesses." And the dad said, "Yes, princesses are everywhere, and they're so pretty." And it was like, oh. Yeah. And then I turned around with the beard. So, so as far as the one that sticks out the most is one of my signature events that I host and perform is CeCe's Drag Bingo. I think everyone loves bingo. I grew up playing bingo with my mom. I was 7 years old in the bingo halls. You know, everyone had their cigarettes, and I learned how to play. And that was my bonding time with my mother. So it was very important for me to continue that tradition. And when people often ask, what is drag bingo? It's like, well, it's the host or hostess will be in drag. Between each game, there will be a number. There will be a performance from one of the hosts. And it's just a good time. Most recently in the last year, actually, the one that stands out in downtown Winston-Salem, I hosted at a venue, and we had a sign outside that said drag bingo tonight. And this couple came up and they said, "What is drag bingo?" Explained it to them. And a male-female couple. So they came in, and actually the man won one of the games, and was so excited. Well, it was in a theater, like a black box theater, so it wasn't a club. And so once the game was done, it was time to leave. And he won. The theater had a bar, and he wanted to continue to drink. And they were like, "Well, no, you can. There's plenty of bars here in downtown Winston-Salem. We need to close up and shut down." Then he took out money from his wallet. And he threw it at the bartender, who actually was the artistic director for this theater. And they picked up his money and gave it back. And he was like, you all are heterophobic. And then he came out onto the sidewalk and started just, you're not fooling anyone. We know that you're men dressed as women. And it's like, because they wouldn't continue to serve him. Yeah. And I've learned to just disengage. This man was obviously overserved already. That's another reason why they didn't want to continue to provide him alcohol, but they were closing. So I'm fortunate that I've never experienced physical violence being in drag. People have gotten very close and have gotten very verbal with me. I have learned to de-escalate situations through humor. I'll crack a joke and I'll start like, "You're a man in a dress." I'm like, "Yes, And I'm like, yes, gold star. You have figured out life's mysteries. And so I've had friends and fellow performers that have experienced physical violence. I think that part of growing up, knowing that I'm different, just growing up knowing I'm gay, I have learned to defend myself against bullies. I'm also the youngest of 4 boys. All my brothers are all military officers. And even at a young age, my brothers taught me, they knew I was different. And they said, we're going to teach you how to fight. And I'm like, okay, I learned to fight with words. I've learned to fight with kindness. Because when people start realizing that I'm not impacted by your words, I actually find it amazing. I'm like, thank you. They then realize they're not going to get to me. And that started for me at a young age. And it's something that I have continued. When people say, you're always so nice, I'm like, well, I'm not going to expel extra energy because someone doesn't like what I do.
Excellent. We're gonna come right back. We're gonna take our first break on Coffee Pan Dulce, and we'll be right back after this message in 30 seconds. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching our Coffee Pan Dulce show every week. Don't forget you can watch us visually on our video podcast platforms on Facebook and YouTube, but you can also listen to us on your favorite audio podcast platforms like Apple, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and all of the other ones that your favorite, whatever your favorite is. Once again, thank you for watching us on Coffee Pan Dulce. We'll dance out. All right, welcome back. And what an incredible story. Hey, Jenny, I got a question for you that I want to come back to CeCe for a while we have him, because we do value your time. And thank you so much for joining us. I understand the time and effort it takes to come on our little bootleg show here. So Jen, one of the things that I've noticed, and you and I've talked about this before all the time, Republicans run on fear. Traditionally, Democrats run on inspiration. Democrats usually vote for people because they inspire them. Republicans, they vote because they're afraid of something. So the things that CeCe's talking about, that you've talked about, to me, are no different than what was told about African Americans or Black people, or even where I grew up, Tejanos or Latinos, Hispanics, whatever term you use. You don't want to be around them. If they're going to ruin society. They're going to, if they marry one of us, we don't want them invading our area. It's the same logic. And now that marriage equality has passed, there's smaller and smaller groups for these conservative white nationalists, kind of religious people to go after. They can't really go after, well, they still go after things, but there's smaller and smaller groups that make people angry. And it seems like this election cycle is transgender people, transgender kids, and drag queens. Those are the 3 groups that they're after, that they still think they can upset people. So and it seems like it's kind of generational. Millennials and Gen Zers, this doesn't really impact them, or does it? I mean, Jen, you're pretty familiar with that generation. It seems like it's Gen Zs, like our former co-hosts. Those are the people that, for some reason, this upsets them to see a guy in a white dress show up to the Academy.
Well, she's not a Gen Z; she's a Gen X.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying is the Gen Xers are the ones that somehow, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, and also too, I mean, our former co-host is hyper religious, and which there's nothing wrong with it until it starts jumping into other people's lives when it shouldn't be. And sometimes it's just like a lot of people say, just mind your own business. I'm not a threat to your existence unless, of course, somehow you're finding yourself attracted to me, and you can't wrestle with that in your own mind. And I think when somebody yells, that you're heterophobic, like in your case, CeCe, and things like that, one, obviously some substances really affected their thought process, but 2, it says a lot about them. It says that they could be very much had some kind of crush on the performers, or is closetly bisexual or gay or pansexual, and has not come to terms with their own sexuality or gender identity. And I think whenever I've gotten pushback on public, because I'm a very, gender ambiguous person, like I dress, sometimes in overalls like I'm wearing now, and it's actually rainbow overalls at that. Is
your
that
trademark beret?
And my beret, of course.
It's your trademark.
And whether I wear makeup or not or whatever, I get a lot of comments when I'm out and about, and I deal with a lot of times with humor, or I ask them a question on why they're attracted to me, which always puts them on their heels, because they're like, well, I'm not attracted to you. Now, obviously, if you took the time to talk to me and approach me, I take it as you're hitting on me. That you have some sort of like little boy crush on me. And it's typically a cis male, and typically somebody that says they're straight. And I go, what is your investment into my gender identity? And just like the same way with drag performers, what does it matter to you? At the end of the day, you're going to go home and be, whatever you are in your little twisted world. And the drag performers are going to go home. Either they're going to clock out and they're going to go home, because they just, performance is over, show's over. You don't have to go home, but you do need to leave, And I've seen this somewhat in the burlesque world. I worked in a bar that was a performance bar that had a black box theater at the back of the bar. It was primarily drag-lesque and burlesque performers that would perform there. And we would get some of that same thing. And when a lot of times I worked the door and the security at these performances, and I found it really bizarre that, one, there was a lot of gender bender performers, a lot of non-binary people, a lot of drag performers, things of that nature, but different acts of the show, like it was usually a 3-act show. A couple of them presented different genders during the show. They would vacillate between male, female, and somewhere in between. And some of our more redneck patrons seem to be very,
because this is in Texas, right?
This is in Texas. Now, this is
all right. Okay.
So we're not talking about the vast. We're not even talking about like Austin, Texas, or something like that, or
San Antonio, or
Houston, or something. Like we're not talking. We're not talking
any of the civilized world. Sorry.
Yeah, this is Amarillo, Texas, where we're talking about, and which is ironic because it was a gay couple that owned this bar, and they called it a people bar, and it was. Everybody was welcome, and they had a zero tolerance towards hate, no racism, no homophobia, no sexism, so on and so forth. But every once in a while, we'd have somebody just really lose their mind about either the performers or somebody like myself working there. And I just, it typically did involve a lot of alcohol.
So do you think
also just a weird inner anger from them, it just almost a childlike confusion, like I don't know what to do with myself, so I'm just going to stomp my feet and be mad,
But don't you? But yeah, but I agree. But Jenny and CeCe, you can jump in if you'd like. But don't you think that, like, for example, I understand boomers having say, I've never been to a gay bar, I've never been to Pride, and this is the first drag queen I've ever seen. Gen Xers, I understand less, because when I was growing up, it was pretty common. I mean, not common, but it was a different generation. The 90s was different. There was a lot of things that were different, and so forth. Now, millennials, no, this is not even an issue. For many millennials and Zs, it's even further an issue. So it's just exists. But it seems like right now, the ones that are so obsessed with this are not boomers anymore, because they're kind of getting ready to move on to the next level that they're going to move on to. It's the Gen Xers right now, the Moms for Liberty people, the people in my generation that are these born-again Christians that are going to evangelical churches now, who were okay with it in the 90s and maybe even the early 2000s, but now suddenly, I don't want these books in my grandkids' library. Yeah, go ahead.
At this conference that you're at, did you guys talk about any security issues or concerns, or was there any workshops on the concerns about that's kind of getting politicized and maybe getting a little out of hand, CeCe?
Sure.
Yeah, so it was, can I name the conference? Is that okay?
Yeah, no,
yes, I'm sure they would appreciate it. So it was Out and Equal, the Workplace Summit, and the work that Out and Equal does for LGBTQ workplace equality. There were many sessions. Unfortunately, you wouldn't be able to attend all of them because they ran in blocks and they ran concurrently, depending on the time zone or depending on the time. But there were so many great conferences or so many great workshops around so many different topics. The two that really stuck out to me, one was talking about letting in versus coming out, which was a very interesting concept. And then there was one on neurodiversity, so gay and autistic, gay and bipolar. So it was very interesting. As far as from a security perspective, there were workshops on this. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend them. And even I'll pull it back, just the security at the hotel, because the conference was at the hotel. We were staying at a on the Strip. And one thing I noticed, what was interesting, there was a lot of people as I would walk through the casino or through the lobby, especially in drag. There was some stairs. And then you would see I heard, well, it is Vegas. And then they went back to doing what they were doing, back on their slot. Sure. So I found it interesting that that they put themselves in a context of, well, it's Las Vegas. So I would expect to see a drag queen in a full evening gown walking around a lobby. But if I'm at home, that shouldn't happen. So I think that
interesting.
I think that it's people have some sort of acceptance depending on the environment. And I think it could come back to, members of the LGBTQ plus or what we do. I look at it like this. So I came out at a very early age. So I'm also a Gen Xer. I was born in the 70s. Am I doing it right? Is that the right Gen X? Okay, I was born in the 70s. I came out to my mother at a very young age. And actually, she came to me. I remember that I was 13 years old. I was watching Mr. Belvedere on TV. And she sat down on the edge of my bed and said, I have a question for you. No matter how you answer, I'm your mother and I love you. And I really thought it was going to be something like, why didn't you wash the dishes? Why didn't you take out the trash? And she says, are you gay? And without a beat, I just said, yeah. And she went, oh, okay. And she got up and walked out. No conversation for another year until we were or actually it was a few years. Then we started watching the movie we were watching the movie Demolition Man. And I had a huge crush on Benjamin Bratt. And she said, and I said, oh, he's so cute. And she turned, she said, is it because I divorced your father?
Oh. And
I said, well, Mom, I think his parents have something to do with him being cute. I don't think you and Dad had anything to do with Benjamin Bratt's attractiveness. No, that you're like that. And I just had to explain to her, it's just, this is how I was born. And I have a brother who's left-handed, and I did the parallel. I said, he's doing the same thing the rest of us are doing, just in a way that's more comfortable for him. Let's fast forward, 20 plus years. There was a guy I went to high school with that was openly gay in high school and in Texas. And he sent me a message and said, is there a way I can get in contact with your mother? I was like, my mother? He says, I just want to thank her. He said, and he lived a few streets over from us. He said, I used to talk to her about these feelings I was having, and she was so welcoming and warm and let me know. My mother's very religious. And he said, oh, God loves you. God didn't make mistakes and God loves you. And I was like, my mother? But I was like, very different conversations than we had. But I think when it doesn't happen at home, we're more empathetic. And I think that's what's happened. I saw that happening this week in Las Vegas. Oh, well, this is not my home, so I can be more accepting and empathetic. To my mother's point, this is not my child, so I can be empathetic. But when it happens at home, then I'm going to have an issue with it, which is where a lot of this. And I use the word miseducation. People, if you don't understand what's happening, you don't understand drag, you don't understand a drag show, you don't understand, fill in the blank, then you're going to make your own inferences and your own conclusions. And I think from the these Gen Z moms that Christian mentioned, now that's a generation that has so much information at their fingertips, misinformation at their fingertips. My husband, when I got home late last night and then this morning, I was talking to my husband. He said, "Oh, remind me to tell you what my sister said." So his sister sent him this article about, fill in the blank. It was something LGBTQ. And her comment was, and knows we're gay and we're a married couple, and said, "Oh, the LGBT community is out of control." So this morning he read the article and he said, it had nothing to do with, it was a very interesting article. My husband responded to his sister and said, a journalist should be leading with facts, should be talking about facts, not leading the reader. So this is a very slanted article. But ultimately he said, and we both agreed, how does this concern you? And Jenny, I loved your statement. I wrote it down. What's your investment into my gender identity? And I'm going to steal that. I'm telling you right now.
Only steal from the best. Just say it.
Right. Like, what is your investment in this? And even I've learned that when my mother's conservative, and when I want to talk to you about something, and she wants to hear my point of view, and we'll talk. I said I can only give you my perspective, and then I'll say, how does this impact you? And there's no answer. So I think that's where you all hit it. Both of you hit it on the head. Where it's we need something to be angry about, because that's our platform. It's look at the word conservative. We're conserving what we have. We don't want to change. Otherwise, they would be called change makers. They wouldn't be called conservative.
They'd be progressive,
Right.
That's right.
And I think you hit something very poignantly, Neil. I think one of the touchstones is probably the drag story hours that have been happening for a long time. So this is the drag story hours I've seen when I lived in the Midwest about 8-9 years ago, and there was drag story hours there too, like in Springfield, Missouri, and places that are not even huge metropolitan areas. And I think part of what the outrage is when it happens in an area that is already battling or wrestling with the LGBT debates and and the shock and awe. And I think also too, another thing that you said that was very important, CeCe, was the miseducation, the op-ed pieces that are pretending to be journalistic, but they're more opinion based, and they're saying, just like back in the day, before the Civil War, one of the debates of freeing the slaves was the fear that black men were going to roam the countryside free, and we're going to be raping and pillaging. And just like we saw at the beginning of the MAGA movement, and the candidate Donald Trump was saying in 2016, well, these undesirables coming over our southern border, and they're going to rape and pillage and rob people, and disparaging an entire group of people, when criminality amongst those people is the same percentage that it is with American citizens, which is less than 1%. And again, a lot of ignorance, a lot of twisting of facts or leaving out facts altogether. And the same can be said for, would you see little kids sitting around in a little circle, and the drag queens in their performance garb, and they're reading Cat in the Hat or Where the Sidewalk Ends, or whatever, whatever childhood cutesy story is, they don't comment about the content of what they're reading. They're commenting the fact that drag queen, which the majority of drag queens are gay men predominantly, or trans women, and they're in that space in their hometown, and all of a sudden sparks shoot out of the conservatives' asses, and they go, "Oh my gosh, a homosexual reading a book to a child." And I'm like, you do realize that gay people exist in families, and that they probably have nieces and nephews that they also take to the circus or do normal things that we do. We're not pod people. We just don't drop out of the sky like Batman and just show up at certain functions and then we disappear out of society. We have day jobs. We have A lot of times we have interaction, we have families, the whole 9 yards.
Sure. Hey, Jen, I'm going to cut you short because we need to take our second break, and we're going to have CeCe answer that. So we'll be right back on our second break on Coffee Pan Dulce. Howdy, everyone. I'm Christian Cano with the Coffee Pan Dulce Show, based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. I just want to remind everyone that we have less than 22 days, I think, 22 days to vote on November the 8th. And I just want to urge everyone to get out there and vote. If you're not registered to vote, you can actually register, I believe, day of in North Carolina during early voting. But also, please remember to grab your neighbor, grab a tia, a tío, a mija, a mijo, grab someone who's eligible to vote and registered to vote, and take them out to vote. This election is so important, as every election is. But remember, you only have about 22 days left, so there's a link that's going to be on the bottom here. Follow that link if you need more information about getting out to vote. And once again, please get out to vote like your family's future depends on it, because our families do. Thank you. Get out to vote. All right, welcome back. And sorry to interrupt you, Jen. But the question to you, CeCe, if I'm hearing this right, was that a question or?
No, I mean, I was kind of expanding on the deal, and I think that's where the front lines of a lot of those battles are.
Yeah.
Is it because some drag shows have become more family friendly, where you've seen them at restaurants, you've seen them at Black Box Theaters, sometimes you've seen them in different things. And I think the combination of that, plus the combination of the drag queen story hours, has put it into Main Street Americana. And just like the disconnect, if you're in Vegas, you expect to see strippers and drag queens and all kinds of other stuff, because what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, and Martha's
but Jenny, don't you
out. But if you go to the elementary school, all of a sudden, oh my gosh, there's a drag queen in our elementary school. Yeah.
But Jenny, don't you think? Yeah. Jenny, don't you think? And CeCe, you can jump in. Don't you think that's the complete hypocrisy of most of these religious and evangelical or Christian individuals that are so outraged about this? These are the same people in Texas that go down to Mardi Gras and whore it up on Bourbon Street. These are the same people in Florida that go down to Key West to watch the drag shows. These are the same people that go to Vegas and created the motto, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. These are the same people that go to Washington, D.C., and the gay bars are always the busiest when Republicans come into town. So it's such a hypocrisy, because, like you said, they don't mind doing it. They just don't want it brought back to, they want all of that stuff to happen away from them so they can just go. Is that kind of what I'm hearing? Or?
There's always been this mindset of segregation in the conservative circles, no matter who it is, whether it is, I don't want my kid to go to school with black and brown kids, whether it is, they like it compartmentalized, to exactly what CeCe made a great point saying, we're in Vegas, Martha, that's okay. We just keep on playing our slot machines and we'll be fine. And once we get back to Pig's Knuckle, Arkansas, it'll be back to normal, and it'll be back to Jesus and cold beer. And and I think and I come from a very conservative family too, a military family, no less. And I think it's how they process things. Some of it is how they process things. I think some of it is the conservative nature does not move as fast. And I think some of it is political opportunity, opportunity to outrage people that drag.
Because what else are they going to be outraged
uniform.
About? I mean,
is talking to children. Like, how dare they talk to children? And I don't think it's just that too far from back in the early days of Sesame Street, when people of color were reading books and interacting with white kids. And there was a controversy back then too. There was a lot of conservatives that didn't like the diversity or the liberalism of Sesame Street and all that, and kind of considered it, too progressive, too much, too soon. And you hear that a lot from conservatives. Oh, that's just too much. That's too liberal. That's too out there. I'm like, well, that's your problem, not ours.
All right, Jen. Hey, CeCe, you want to top on any of those before we go to our last segment?
I think that so I haven't been asked many times about, children at drag shows and just exposing folks, exposing young minds to, and I have not participated in a drag queen story hour yet. Usually my schedule's a little too filled up. I have friends who have, but I have described it as what would be the difference if I showed up dressed as a clown. Because to me, I consider myself a clown. I'm wearing a face full of makeup with a wig out to here and a colorful outfit. Or like a princess, like the little girl in Vegas. Look, Daddy, princesses. My point to people and just in general, if you don't want your kids seeing drag, don't take them to drag events. Don't try to ruin the experience for other families. If you take kids out of it, if you don't want to, I don't like drag queens, then don't go to a drag show. I don't believe in gay marriage, then don't get gay married, and you'll be absolutely fine. Jenny and Christian, you all had mentioned this earlier. Drag is an art. Art is subjective. Let's replace art and drag. Some drag, some art. Some drag is for children. Some drag isn't. It's no difference with movies, paintings, books. Just if you don't want to expose yourself to that, don't go. Don't see it.
You said it perfectly. Here's my fear, real quickly before we go to this last commercial. By saying drag is different than clown, we're going to have some MAGA person, Jenny, who watches this and says, yes, they're all clowns. You know what I mean?
Well, I consider the source. Jethro in his third grade education, if he wants to throw stones at me,
Good
and
point.
His wife/sister is upset about me existing. It's not my problem. As I say, it's not my circus. It's not my monkeys. And you clearly have a lot of misery and confusion in your life. Good luck with that in your grandma's basement. But to me personally, I'm very happy with who I am, and I think that's part of the problem too. I think some people want to claw back society back to the 1860s or whenever they thought the ideal period is, and when they see people being happy, when they see people getting gay married or performing or enjoying their life, and they have a miserable life, because you'd have to be miserable if you're married to MTV.
Excellent. Well, hey, Jen, I'm going to cut you off here.
Would you be that upset about other people?
I agree. I'm going to cut you off, and then when we come back, CeCe, if you want to answer that, and then we're going to try to end the show the last 10 minutes on something fun. So if you like what Jenny has to say, she does have a show that comes on 30 minutes after this on Wednesdays at 11:30 on Wednesdays, not after this particular show, but on Wednesdays. It's called Two Queers in a Truck, and she really lets her hair down and really says it how she feels. So please watch Two Queers in a Truck. This last commercial is talking about Two Queers in a Truck.
Up next is Two Queers in a Truck with Jenny and Christian, and hope you guys tune in. We'll see you in about 15 to 20 minutes. Thank you. Bye.
Welcome back to Coffee and Pan Dulce. I'm sorry, people get all picky about how I say that. Coffee and Pan Dulce, Cafe and Dulce. Is that what you say, Jen? So you're looking right now at one of CeCe's wonderful outfits that she wears, and this is CeCe on CeCe TV. What a wonderful outfit! And then I'm going to show you another one here.
Oh.
That one come up.
All
right, and there she is. Good. And I can tell you, I've seen CeCe perform, and she is not only hilarious, but she actually has a very good voice. So for those who, I don't know if y'all know that, but CeCe actually has a very good voice. And so one of the things I wanted to kind of talk about is, and Jen, you can kind of jump in here. So there was CeCe in both of those outfits, and I can tell you, not only is she she's a really good performer. He is a really good performer in drag, but he's also a good singer. So one of the things that I've learned is not all drag queens do lip syncing, right? And they sing and they entertain in other ways. I mean, most of them do kind of lip syncing, right? And so I can share with you that an undisclosed location that we go to every year for a month, I am guilty of going to probably 20 shows a month. I'm a VIP at this particular place. So it is very entertaining to me. And I agree with you say, CeCe, is that it's so ironic that if you don't like your kids going to drag shows, don't send your kids to a drag show. So how can you be supportive of parental rights and less government, but then at the same time say, I want to control this parent's rights and more government? It's hypocritical. But let's talk fun stuff. So CeCe, what is like your typical, how do you get ready? I mean, how long does it take to look like those pictures that we saw?
So honestly, it's because, the genesis of the beard began about 3 or 4 years ago. I'm in addition to doing drag, I also am a stage actor. And at the time I was in a musical where my character required me to have a beard. And then I was asked to host and MC a fundraiser and in drag. And I said, well, I'm in a beard. What do you think about bearded drag? The organizers thought it was great. For the most part, it was a hit. There are still some people that tell me because I wear a beard, it's not drag.
Okay.
You talked to, I'd love to sing live. I also play the piano and during performances. I started that about 15 years ago. And people then said, that's not drag because drag queens don't sing live. Drag queens aren't musicians. Sure. I love to wear flats and a little kitten heel. And people say, that's not drag because drag queens wear sky-high stilettos. And I'm like, oh, but I'm too old. My feet hurt. So as far as getting ready, because of the beard, now I can honestly do my makeup in about 15 minutes.
Wow.
I give myself an hour to get ready just from top to bottom. But for me, the most time consuming part are my eyebrows, because I'll putty over these and then draw them back on, but I have to putty, let it dry. And I use a theatrical putty when I utilize that. So that takes the longest time. And then I just fill in the beard a little bit. But as far as even like utilizing pads and different things to contour my body, I tend to wear outfits and costumes that aren't very form-fitting. One of my signatures, like you saw in the picture, I love a good 50s house dress with a petticoat, crinoline. Very much a nod to my mother because
you look just like Mama.
I know. And my mother will see that and she'll be like, "Ay, mijo, I love that dress." I'm like, well, you're the inspiration behind it. Like, she loves it when I dress like that. And I'm like, well, it's a nod to you because my mother, even now, does not leave her house without a full face of makeup and her hair done and just enough jewelry.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's very much my inspiration. But I give myself an hour, but honestly, I could do a quick drag in 15, 20 minutes and get ready to twirl around.
Well, I think what I'll say is like modern drag queens or modern drag performers have pushed the envelope a lot, which I really like seeing. I like seeing the inclusion of trans performers, drag kings, for people that are assigned female at birth, but do some type of masculine gender bending performance. I think it's about smoke and mirrors, but it's also about a performance art. And just like in theater, some characters have beards, some people don't. Some people play fairies, like in Tinkerbell, and all that. Like, so there's so many nuances, and you've started to see even the drag influence on burlesque, or burlesque is influencing drag. I don't know which, but I've seen several performance companies where one of my good friends, Miss Micah back in Texas, performs both on drag stages and burlesque stages, and has actually, I've seen them sing, I've seen them lip sync, I've seen them do some gymnastics moves that are just incredible during a burlesque performance. And so I don't know how you feel about this, CeCe, but it seems like there's more diversity in what we call the field of drag and more outside influences. Do you think that's good for the drag industry, or how do you feel about the diversity?
I absolutely love it. It's one of my drag mottos has always been, if you call it drag, it's drag. And there's more than one way to do drag. As I said, because I'm a live performer, I have been told for years, like, this is not drag. What you do is not drag. I think that I think, shows like RuPaul's Drag Race have definitely put drag in mainstream, but I think they've also put this template as to what drag should be. But then there's multiple templates. You have like a Trixie Mattel type, you have an Aquaria, those, you have those that are very passable, which is when I started drag, that was the look, to be as real enough, to be as passable as possible. And I think that we're now seeing, it's not that people are trying to change drag, they're trying to do drag authentically. So I think, I'll just say for me, before, when I started drag in 1997, it was, this is what I was told drag is. So I need to fit that mold. And so in seeing how people are saying, well, I often see people will come to my shows and say, I love the beard. I love the beard. I think I might want to start doing drag. I'm like, do it. Because they're like, I just, I can shave and in 8 seconds, I already have double. I'm like, that's me. So it was sometimes challenging to be real with a 5 o'clock shadow. So I think people now with that, what is fueling the diversity is that people are saying, well, this is my way to do drag and I'm going to present it that way. And now we're seeing so many different ways of presenting and performing on stage. And I absolutely love it.
And, and one interesting thing is, of course, I've been trans all my life, but I haven't always presented as female as I do now. And I've noticed as the trans community has become more diverse in its presentation with non-binary identities. And, there's so many different, there's 16 or 17 major categories with subcategories, and you see so many different presentations. The passable term has become more toxic in the transgender community, and it's more about just being yourself. And I follow somebody, a Latinx non-binary trans person on Instagram, and she's also very beautiful, very young, and a model. And when she models like lingerie or stuff, she doesn't tuck. She doesn't, and so she has original factory equipment, and it's real obvious when she does her modeling, and talks about being authentic and not worrying about if somebody sees a bulge or sees this or sees that. And I think our world is changing and becoming more expansive and more progressive, and yet we can still make space for a old school performer like a RuPaul that likes the purity of drag and is struggling with even to the chagrin of the transgender community at times. But we've also seen Ru evolve, and we saw Kylie Sonique win All-Stars last year. That's a trans woman, and 5 years ago that wouldn't have happened. She wouldn't have been able to be on the All-Star show. And so I think as performances change, like the art form of stage and screen and all that has changed since the days of Shakespeare, when women couldn't even perform, to now when anybody can perform, and art is just beautiful. Art is as you said, is subjective, and it's based on the perspective of what you have. Not all art's for everybody.
Well, I can tell you, because we've run out of time, and we were supposed to keep this last segment fun, Jenny, by the way. And so I can tell you, that was fun. That was fun. I can tell you, the first time I saw drag with the beard, even me, who was familiar with drag, was like, oh, it was a little, because you're conditioned to not want to see change. Maybe that's the conservative part of me. And it's something you have to get used to. You have to, and now I see it a lot here in Charlotte. And when I travel around as well, it's not as uncommon. Like, the real is not as important as it was now. It's just a great performance, and it's also allowed a lot of the older drag queens who've been performing longer to perform longer, because they don't have to look like RuPaul. They can look however they look at the time. My favorite drag queen is Michelle Stevens in Key West. She's about 100 years old. She tells me she's only 66, but I think she's 100. And she is the best performer. I mean, she's still, it's just incredible. So I love the fact that, as you said, CeCe, that people are just being their authentic self, and that people in general are being their authentic self, because it's about time we start judging people by what's on the inside and not just what they look like on the outside. If we got to challenge them, It's wonderful. So this has been a really good show. Now, I'm sure we're going to get a lot of Moms for Liberty people who are going to be upset. And I'm sure Jenny's going to be busy all week long answering those postings on our social media.
And it's after I exchange a few words with them, I always say, hey, thanks for commenting and watching because you move us up the algorithm.
Exactly.
So, you know you're not hurting us. You're actually helping us.
Yeah.
And then they usually stop commenting after that. But anyway, I'm sure we will get a lot of views over the show. I appreciate CeCe coming on and taking time out of their busy schedule to delight us with their presence and their experiences. And I completely agree with CeCe. Drag is a beautiful art form. It has touched my life many times. I have many close personal friends that are in the drag industry all over the country. And obviously, if you're threatened by an art form, maybe you need a new hobby. But anyway, exactly. I appreciate the work that you do and appreciate your art form. And I hope you keep going for many years.
Thank you.
Excellent. So now let's we want to thank everyone for watching us, but we're going to go around a Brady Bunch screen. Tell us where you're going to be over the next week. We'll start with you in 30 seconds or less. Jenny?
Well, I mean, this is my favorite time of year, so I love Halloween. I don't know what I'm doing the last weekend, but I'm sure I'm going to be into some kind of monkey business, as I usually am. I love every part of this holiday, and I also like Reese's peanut butter cups too. So there's that, especially the bat-shaped ones right now. So, CeCe.
So on October 27th, I will be appearing in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, at Small Batch Brewing Company, doing my world famous drag bingo with my co-host on a yacht. That will be at 7:00, free to enter, free to play. And then on Halloween night, I will be at my home bar of Radar Brewing Company in downtown Winston-Salem, hosting my world famous drag bingo with my co-host on a yacht. And that's also from 7 to 9, no cover, free to play. And yeah, and then the rest of the time, also like Jenny, enjoying Reese's peanut butter cups. Those are my favorite.
Y'all get the expensive candy. I must have grown up with the hood. We get the corn, the corn things.
Candy corn.
The candy corn. Hey, CeCe talked about that during when I saw her about candy corn. Hey, real quickly, how do you come up with your drag names?
So for me, it was just my initials. It's just my initials with my name.
Okay.
But I've heard a few different formulas. One has been the name of your first pet and the street you grew up on is how some people come up with their drag name. Others will say they'll get named, especially if they're part of a house. There could be an entire whole episode on house, in ballroom culture, and you get named by your house mother. So those are some of the formulas that I've heard. So
real quickly before we end, Jenny, what would yours be?
I don't know. It would probably have something to do with a rainbow culture. I'd probably be like something unicorn or rainbow bride, something like that.
Rainbow bride. Yeah, that's a good one. Mine would be one of three. I want to be either Charlotte Lenore. I live in Charlotte, and Lenore. It just sounds like a drag name, Lenore, or Lady Bless Your Heart, or Holly Pena. I like Holly Pena.
I like that.
With that said, we'll see the kind of responses we get. Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope this gave a little bit of education for people in talking about the war on drag queens. Most important thing is, if you don't want people, government, or nosy moms, whatever, telling you how to raise your kids, go out and vote. Go out and vote November the 8th. Go out and vote. Early voting is on right now, regardless of where you live. Please go out and vote. We can't stress that enough. Go out and vote. So thank you so much. We'll see you on Wednesday on our regular show on Coffee Pan Dulce. And Jenny, you may have some music for us to dance out. I like to dance. Bye, y'all. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, y'all. Thanks. Hey, y'all. Thanks for watching. And if we didn't, we'd just be sitting here talking to ourselves. So be safe out there. Enjoy some Halloween candy. Get some Reese's peanut butter cups. And have a good time. Thank y'all.
Bye, boo. Bye, y'all.
Next up, thanks for watching Coffee and Pan Dulce. Next up is Two Queers in a Truck. Stay tuned.